Hello again.
Hey,
Good
how's it
morning.
going?
Good. Thank you. Okay, so good morning, everybody who's joined us this morning, and welcome to episode 3 of Mixpanel's In Conversation With. For those of you who don't know me, my name is James McLeod, and I lead our UK and I organization here at Mixpanel. For those of you who haven't joined an episode before, the In Conversation With series is where I interview some of Mixpanel's most exciting customers to learn a little bit more about those contacts within those customers that are using Mixpanel, to learn a little bit more about their businesses, and just have a chat about what they're doing, what their challenges are, how they're using Mixpanel, and hopefully sharing some useful insight that everyone can take away. So I will pass over and allow Thomas and Boaz to introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then also if one of you could introduce the audience to Zilch, that'd be great.
Thanks, James. All right, so just quickly on what Zilch is, what it is that we do. Zilch is a UK-based payments technology company that offers customers a virtual MasterCard called the Commerce Card. This allows people to earn rewards on debit payments in the form of cashback or to spread interest-free repayments over 6 weeks. The company has built what we like to call an ad-subsidized payment network, which allows retailers around the world to be connected directly with those customers and to offer them savings, deals, and discounts in a cookieless world. That's briefly what Zilch does.
We should have added a link to here's where you can get one. That would have been
Yeah, you can find us on the App Store.
We'll do that.
And I'm Boaz, and what I do at Zilch is briefly growth analytics, everything that's growth analytics related. And this year is Tom.
Hello, I'm Tom. And I'm CRM lead at Zilch. So I've been CRM about 6 years, and Secret Escapes, Deliveroo, bulk for any gym goers in the audience,
We're Zilch.
Yeah.
Good to meet you both. Just a quick question. How long have you both been at Zilch? Because it's a relatively young organization, right?
It is a relatively young organization, and I think Tom and I think we've earned the right to call ourselves old hands almost, because we've been here since July 21.
Yeah, you joined like a month.
Yeah, so I joined 2 weeks before, so I'm obviously more senior. But apart from that, we've been here for almost 2 years now, and that makes us not the oldest people at the company, but definitely in the top.
Most experience.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you've been volunteered to come and join one of the UK's biggest growing podcasts, Mixpanel's In Conversation With, so you must be really important. Thanks very much for joining me. So we talk about it being a relatively young organization, but you've scaled a lot, right? So you've now got, I believe, over 3 million customers, which is phenomenal. Which leads me on nicely to kind of the first topic I love to discuss, which is around customer engagement, right? So as you go through hyper growth and maybe international hyper growth, how do you stay engaged with your customers? And then, of course, the link to how do you use the insights you're gaining from Mixpanel to better manage those relationships?
So I think, from a engagement and CRM perspective, we use a few different tools. The 2 big ones that I probably spend most of my life in are HubSpot and OneSignal. And mixture of email and then OneSignal. We do a lot of push and in-app based stuff, and we feed those tools of course, in real time, like a lot of different businesses will. Like you update whatever fields you have in, but we also use things like Looker to grab more targeted and granular sends. And where Mixpanel kind of feeds into it is. The biggest thing for me is it lets us understand our users' behavior over the course of a day. So you think about something like Looker, where it updates once maybe every 24 hours. You come in, you look at the latest dashboards. With Mixpanel, it's all live, and you can really look at whatever you want. Our friend referral rate, specific like retailer behaviors. It's got really anything we want. And I think from my perspective, that's really handy during the course of a day, because once Looker's updated, you've got to wait the next day, whereas Mixpanel is just like live all the time. And I think there's probably like 2 campaigns that, off the top of my head, I think illustrate like the value that I get in the CRM from Mixpanel. So the first one would probably be just like education. So one of the really cool things that we have are Zilch rewards, which is effectively, when you use the product and you pay in one anywhere you want, online or in store, we give you Zilch rewards, like cashback and Zilch rewards, and you can basically go and use those wherever you want pretty much immediately, which is really cool. But naturally, like, some people might forget that they've got like Zilch rewards on their account, or my mum would be a great example of someone who I had to show her in like the course of like 10 seconds, like how to activate her Zilch rewards. But we naturally run, emails and comms push to educate people on how to use their rewards. It's such a great loyalty part of the product that we have. And when we send those emails out, when we send those comms out, push perhaps on one signal, we're able to, using Mixpanel, upload the audience into Mixpanel. So we go into the user tab in Mixpanel, like we tap them in the import feature. And like using funnels, we can see some quite cool stuff to actually know that our customers are getting some value from the comms that we're sending. So you can create a funnel, how many people, started a session off the back of an email, like, hey, James, you've got X pounds in Zilch rewards. And then, how many of those people using Mixpanel funnels then went on to toggle the button to show that they're actually, toggling their Zilch rewards on and off, and they worked out how to use it. And that's like a really cool way in which I think from a CRM perspective, we get a lot of value, like using the funnels feature in Mixpanel. And I think the other one is the sync feature that you guys have. So, we, like I said at the start, we use one signal, and we have data, of course, just in one signal, but the cohort feature in Mixpanel, I think from a CRM perspective, I find it to be like really handy, because you're basically able to go in and you can be as granular as you want, or as broad as you want. So being able to basically create those cohorts, and then I think it's literally like 2 clicks. You literally just sync it to one signal. It appears within normally about 5 minutes in one signal, and it's a recurring sync. So people fall out of the audience, they fall out. If they come in, and they get sent to one signal. And using that feature, I suppose a perfect example is we launched some really cool top rewards category on our storefront recently. So you can get like up to 5% back in Zilch rewards on some of our retailers on the app now. And we were powering up in-app pop-ups and using the sync from Mixpanel to one signal, and then one signal was like providing that in-app using the audience created by Mixpanel. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we do. I think those are probably the 2 big ones.
James, you can see why that's a powerful call to action, right? You've got unspent money that is yours that you can deduct off your next purchase right now. You can go and spend it on whatever you like. That's a pretty powerful driver of app usage.
Yeah, my thinking around this, and I would assume it's right, but it'd be good to get your perspective, is there a relationship about how long it takes from receiving that award to executing on it, in the likelihood to execute on it? So my thinking is, I might get it, and if I don't do something immediately with it, it tends to lag a little bit. Is there like stages? Do you try to get immediate usage and then maybe a week later usage?
Yes, that's actually a very, very good question. So there's 2 slightly, there's 2 factors that slightly pull people in 2 different directions. First of all, the more you use the app, the more rewards you accumulate, which is fantastic. I've been using Mixpanel for a long time now. I've not gotten a single pound of rewards from Mixpanel, so the fact that you get rewards from Zilch is great.
I'm helping you build your profile here. Like I said, this is one of the podcasts out there.
That's true. So the more you use the app, the more you accumulate rewards. The thing is that people like to hoard rewards, and people like to accumulate a certain round number. And then once they get there, they want to spend it on a big purchase. So we saw a lot of rewards being used over the holiday seasons. People using it to buy things that they would otherwise not necessarily want to buy because it feels like it's free. Now the issue with that is that you can hoard rewards, but at some point, like it's been a while since you embarked on that mission, you might forget that that's what you're doing. So it comes helpful reminders to say, hey James, you've got 10, 20, 30 pounds worth of rewards in your account, are super, super helpful and super valuable.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the getting to a round figure to drive an activity. So really looking at, is there an optimal time where you maybe want to give that little prompt to say, hey, listen, you're at 10, 20, 30, and then maybe better understanding the types of users and when is the right time to nudge them. I think there is definitely, a real science to the exact time and when you want to engage somebody with that in-app push notification to drive them to complete a purchase, to use a reward or whatever that may be. Super interesting. I'm glad that we can work in combination with other platforms. I think I'm always keen on these types of conversations, not to always make it that Mixpanel is the be all and end all, but actually the strength of Mixpanel is how we work cohesively with other platforms. Like OneSignal here, a key partner of ours and used across many of our customers, but even something like a traditional BI platform like Looker, for example, we use Looker in Mixpanel as well. And I think that sometimes our audience or our prospects can get confused about when is the right time to use traditional BI versus when to use product analytics. But I think you illustrated that quite well. There's a time and a place dependent on the action and the user.
Yeah.
Use these two platforms and they work very cohesively. Yeah. So that's really, really good.
One interesting thing actually, James, is that we actually ingest all of our Mixpanel data into our own data warehouse as well. So what that allows us is, okay, if we want to, Mixpanel is an incredibly versatile tool that allows us to do a lot of things. But there are certain things which we cannot do on Mixpanel, certain pieces of information which we do not store on Mixpanel. Anything related to the customer's very sensitive information as regards to credit score, et cetera, that is a sort of information we don't have on Mixpanel. But because we ingest the Mixpanel data, we can run more complicated analysis using the Mixpanel data in our own data warehouse, putting these two elements together, and then we can, we have the best of both worlds. So what Mixpanel allows us to do is, we've got the actual Mixpanel tool, which is super versatile, super helpful, etc. But when we can't use that for one reason or another, we actually already have all of that data in our data warehouse, and that allows us to do more complex things.
Yeah, great point. I think that there's a lot of our customers utilizing data pipelines to send data from Mixpanel into their warehouse, where they combine it with other data, such as what you mentioned, to do deeper or broader analysis. But then there's still a lot that are not, right? So keeping it in isolation, we are very much pro use Mixpanel when it's the right time to use Mixpanel or the right users, but the more flexibility around sending and sharing data. We never want to hold data in Mixpanel. We wanted to give people the opportunity to use it there, but also to use it in the broader context. Really interesting. The next topic I want to talk about is a little bit about top of funnel marketing, right? So we're talking about how are we using these insights to better engage with our customers and using OneSignal to do that message and engagement. But what about top of funnel? Right? Is there any insights you're gaining from Mixpanel that's helping inform those types of campaigns?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Mixpanel is very powerful in its ability to integrate with all sorts of other partners, and performance marketing is no exception. So you can integrate Mixpanel with Google Ads, you can integrate Mixpanel with Facebook, and that allows you to do things which are pretty cool and nimble. So for instance, you can use Mixpanel to define an audience, people that have performed certain action or people that have viewed certain page. And then you can feed that audience in immediately into whatever other advertising solution you wish to work with. Which and the beauty of it is that it updates every day, right? So, or actually not every day, but more frequently than that. So that's something that we've used with regards to top of funnel activity, and the fact that Mixpanel can give us visibility on a wide range of user behaviors really helps us understand where the top of funnel, how efficient the top of funnel marketing activity is. So for instance, users leads that come from a certain subset of campaigns might progress really quickly up until a certain point, but then at that certain point of the onboarding journey, they get stuck or they decide not to progress or the conversion rate's not that great. So what Mixpanel allows us to do is to see the funnel on a campaign or a campaign type basis. So then we can see, okay, like maybe we need to explain a little bit better in the ad copy or in the onboarding funnel to that particular subset of users why they need to complete these steps, right? So for instance, maybe some people don't understand why they need to. Some people have to provide us with identity documentation, and they might not understand why it is. Well, Zilch is a regulated company. There's certain things we have to do, and I think just communicating these things to customers, understanding where the customer came from, that what their doubts might be, is something that's very powerful and something that Mixpanel allows us to do.
Do you see a big discrepancy dependent on the channel of the acquisition channel where you're coming from?
So,
or is that maybe interrelated with the demographic of the person that you're going, or an age branding, or
it's more the campaign type.
Okay.
So different users come to Zilch with different needs. Some of our users almost exclusively use our Pay in One feature, where you can earn rewards for payments across thousands of merchants or in store or wherever. But some of our users almost predominantly use our Pay in 4 feature, where you can spread payments over 6 weeks. Now, these users have different expectations, and depending on what sort of advertising campaign they come from, they have different understandings of what the onboarding process should be or what it should look like. So, for instance, people who are expecting to earn rewards from shopping are perhaps not expecting as stringent onboarding procedures as people that come for a credit product, right? Because the information is a little bit different. So we need to educate the customer down the funnel and help them understand the reason why we have to do this is because once you land into the app, there's multiple things that you can do there, and we need to make sure that you're capable of doing all of them.
Really, really interesting, and leads me on nicely to my next question. It's as if we've planned this. I think that's really, really good, thinking about the messaging up front to better prepare a user for what they're going to get into when they get into the app, depending on what the feature is that's attracted them into the app. Mixpanel, of course, does amazing things with interacting with our customers, customer relationships, marketing, but I think our core use case is around about product development, right? And using Mixpanel for true product analytics. So understanding how our users are navigating through an application to remove barriers, to increase retention, all of those things. So how are Zilch, must have gone through vast amount of development and change in the product. How are you using product analytics to better understand design, how people move through an app, stuff like that?
Yeah, so what I like to use Mixpanel for, and where it gives us really strong insights, is on what people are actually doing on the app. Not only what they're doing on the app, but how they're doing it. If they're clicking back and forward at a certain stage, post onboarding, when they're trying to figure out how to make their first purchase. The way our app works, the process is quite intuitive when you get used to it. But I think the first time a lot of users have trouble figuring out how to get it to work, because it's simply unlike other payments apps that they might be used to. So we've used the insights that we've gathered from Mixpanel to understand, okay, like what is the user actually expecting to happen when they do this, when they do that, and we use that to inform our designs to make sure that reality and expectations can meet in a way that we keep users happy.
I think like a really cool example of what Boaz is talking about, sort of also at the crossroads of like using something like Mixpanel, the insight tool, is like with our referrals. So like referrals are an important part, of course, for tons of different companies. It's such a great word of mouth tool. And, you know, in the past, when we've run referral campaigns, you know, sometimes we might increase the referral reward for a period of time, or refer X friends and get this. You know, one of the really interesting things with Mixpanel, of course, is that you basically can track any button that people are tapping on the app. And so when we've done like campaigns around this kind of thing before, being able to draw up like insight line graphs in Mixpanel and see how many people, you know, via the user import feature, when you filter for them in the insights part of Mixpanel, and you look at the graph, like how many people are actually tapping the button to share their referral code, and then at the same time, how many of their mates are then going through the Zilch sign-up process with, you know, a URL that includes a referral code, so we know that they've come from a referral. Like, it's kind of, that's just a really kind of cool example of how Mixpanel Insights like lets you see something live as it's happening, as a campaign goes out, and it kind of relates directly to what Boaz was talking about, where you're able to kind of see how someone moves through the product, regardless of whether they're the person referring their mate or if it's their mate joining the product, like for the first time. You're able to really sort of like drill down and see these things and watch people move through and find the friction points, right?
So just leaning into that example, if you imagine the referral process as a funnel, I guess the very, very first step is you see the refer a friend functionality, then you tap on it, then you actually press the share button, then you share it on wherever social media you share it, you text it, etc. Then your friend opens it, and they actually start the onboarding all the way till they make their first purchase. Now, what Mixpanel allows us to do is to, within the product, see very clearly what is happening and how changes can influence these things. So if perhaps we change, I'm just going to come up with an arbitrary example here. If we change the button to the refer a friend in some way or shape or form, or do it change where it's presented, etc., do we see an uplift in the amount of people that click on it? You know, is there a change, etc.? So Mixpanel allows us to monitor that, even run A/B tests. So within product development and product analytics, it's a very valuable tool in that respect.
100%. Do you drive to, or do you see people who have been referred in that manner more likely to go and refer somebody else? Or yes. What do you want them to do next? Do you want them to automatically go and refer, or do you want them to get to a value point and then back to refer?
So when you sign up to Zilch, you as a friend referral, you get Zilch rewards. So naturally, we, you know, a lot of my mates, as soon as they signed up to Zilch, they of course went to use some of those Zilch rewards. So that's of course, you know, the goal. But I think Boaz might be able to talk a bit more about perhaps, do people that get referred go on to refer? I think the answer is yes, because the Zilch rewards is such a great feature. As soon as you use it, you're like,
Yeah.
Gotta go tell my friends about this.
So that's a very good point, James. The clever thing about how the rewards process, the referrals process is structured, is that in order for you to be able to spend your rewards, you need to obviously figure out how to use the app and to actually use the app. So you're already at a point where you then become an actual transacting customer. That puts you in a position where, well, if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, if you liked the process, if you're happy to recommend it to a friend, then you can do that. And we do see it, right? We do see people who are referred to be more likely to refer their friends. They also use a wider set of features than people that come through other campaigns. It's definitely a somewhat different demographic on average, and what you see is very interesting. So we've had quite a few referral campaigns which were very, very big. We got to the top of the App Store in the UK for the finance category, and it's a very interesting process in trying to engineer them and get them to happen. And what you see is that it kind of enters one sort of bubble and it spreads around. Within that bubble, and it enters a new bubble, and it enters a new bubble. So you have to find a little spark that gets it to enter a new bubble, a new set of conscience. We had last year, all of a sudden it started picking up steam, and we didn't realize why. And I did some digging and figured out some DJ in Brighton had discovered us and had shared us to their audience of relatively young Brighton partygoers that we hadn't penetrated as much at that point, and it spread. It was very popular there.
Reddit as well, actually. I remember, quite a few people on Reddit, and I remember
it's quite interesting. I think the insights give you those little nuggets that you might not thought of originally, right? And then it's about, once I understand it, how can I best replicate as much as possible? But interesting you say about going from bubble to bubble, right? So whereas I think, I'm no marketeer, but thinking about, okay, what would be the demographic? Brighton party goers. How do I replicate that and really, really target that? But actually maybe the magic is when you start crossing chasms, right? And going from party goers to maybe higher earners, investors, or then maybe to mothers, as you suggested, and then how do you keep going to keep getting that? You seem to be using data a lot, right? Have you always predominantly been quite a data-driven organization, or has that been as you grow, or was that from the offset?
So when I joined, I was lucky enough that Mixpanel was already set up. We also already had a data warehouse. We try to be data driven at Zilch, and there's always opportunity for improvement. But I feel like we have gotten the ability, and we have gotten quite good at figuring out what the next steps should be based on the numbers and values that we can see. It's something that I've been driving since I joined. But to be honest with you, James, when you're in a company that's growing at a very, very, very fast pace, it's a faster pace than I've ever seen before. Sometimes you don't have the time to do the analysis and the data investigations that you wish you could. So on limited information, you have to be able to make a decision. And we have found ourselves, not so much recently, but in the years of our hyper growth, in a position where we didn't necessarily have all the information we wanted. But Mixpanel was super useful in actually giving us at least some information that at least helped us, make a decision that was at least a little bit data-driven.
Yeah, I think the amount of times I've gone into Mixpanel, brought up insights, and just looked at cumulative comparisons of different time periods. It's that kind of thing where when you're growing so fast as we are, you've got to be able to go in and just try and make a decision based on what you're seeing in something like Mixpanel. Is so great.
And that's why Mixpanel is such a great tool, because people that are, Tom's not necessarily part of the data team, but he is driven, and he can self-serve on Mixpanel and find the insights that he needs to do, and all of Tom's team can do this.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really good point. So, we're fortunate to have like an absolutely brilliant data team here at Zilch, and I've worked in CRM teams before where we're doing a little bit of SQL and different things like that with Looker or I think Google BigQuery, like when I was at like Bulk and places like that. But we can't. I can't probably write some of the lovely queries that Boaz here can write, in Looker. And the ability to have a tool like Mixpanel is so handy for me and my team, because it might be that we want to find out something to do with friend referrals or some of the reward stuff we've spoken about. And I think I'm probably speaking for Boaz here, but I think he probably quite enjoys it when I don't come and pester him about something and I just go get it myself,
Yes.
So,
when I say as well, I should maybe clarify as well, because I have similar conversations. When I say about a data-driven organization, I think people instinctively go to deep data science work or real deep analysis in looking at big data and trends. But I think data-driven organization is at any point interacting with data to better inform a decision, and sometimes that can be quite high level, and then sometimes it requires more deeper analysis. But if there is a solution in place that allows everyone to at least get some reference point, and if you're in hypergrowth, phenomenal, right? Ride the wave. That's not stop. But if there's points of data, in real time or retrospectively that allows you to continue to capitalize and continue to do that, phenomenal. And then there'll be a time and a place where you go, okay, well, let's look back over what the hell just happened. How did we get here? And how do we continue to use that to inform what we want to do?
You're 100% correct, James. I think a lot of companies, I have a background in statistics. I am familiar with all sorts of complex statistical procedures, but really what most companies need 95% of the time is very, very simple exploratory statistics, very, very simple charts. Not that much knowledge of statistics actually required in terms of theory and mathematics. It's more of, okay, let's find the right number and look how it changes over time, and whether what we think we've done actually has driven that number in the way we're expecting it to go. So, it's not a complex data science operation, although there's room for that. And we do that at Zilch as well, particularly with regards to our credit models. But for most things, particularly for product analytics, it's very much a simple exploratory statistics and measurement issue.
And I think tagging onto that is just the fact that I think when I started at Zilch, and also when members of my team, we expanded the CRM team, started. I remember being on calls when I started Zilch, dozens of us on calls with you guys where you ran some pretty handy training right out the gate. So I can remember within the first couple of weeks of being, at Zilch, there was a lot of immediate stuff that we literally would just go and fetch from Mixpanel directly as a result of some of the training that you guys did with us, which was, really handy. And I think, the way in which Mixpanel is kind of used now throughout the business is, I think, there's people like me and Boaz that use it all the time. But I think some of those training sessions has really helped to, embed Mixpanel across the business and empower people to do exactly what Boaz is saying, to just go and find relatively simple things that might appear to be, I don't know how you're going to do it, go and find that. It's actually quite simple. And I think, when you're using a new tool, like half the challenge, if you like, is like actually being like, okay, this is new. I don't know how this works. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
It's actually pretty simple.
I have to admit, James, at the beginning, I was a Mixpanel skeptic. I wasn't sure why we needed this tool. You know, we've already got Looker, we've already got data warehouse. Do we really need another analytics tool? But over time, I have seen that it's become a very, very useful part of our day-to-day.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good to hear. Otherwise, it would have been a pretty bad way to end this conversation.
I mean, awkward.
I think that's it, right? When I think about it, I think that somehow inherently people sometimes think the more complex the analysis, the more value you get out. When in actual fact, the most value comes from, I suppose, on the answer that you're looking for, not the way in which you get it. So the answer the value isn't the answer, but also that you go and action that answer, right? And the time between finding that insight to driving that action is also really, really critical. So for vast majority, and you know, we see it as well. Obviously, we use Mixpanel on Mixpanel, so we can see how our customers are using it. And the most value that most people tend to get is actually quite simple queries. But the value comes from the fact that these people never had the ability to ask those questions and get an answer as quickly as they do with Mixpanel.
Yeah.
And it's in driving the action, right? Because insights are only as valuable as the action that they drive, right? So it's not about an amazing visual. Sometimes it's about going in quickly. I have a hypothesis. I want to test it. Yes, this is what we think. Send it out, make a change, test did it happen. If it didn't, alter. If it did, double down. And sometimes the ability to do that within an 8-hour workday is where you drive real value, in my opinion, especially in organizations like yours, right? Where you're growing super, super fast. Nobody has time for, let's do 3 months of analysis and then make a decision, because your competitor will be far, far further ahead by that point. So agility is key.
Yeah. I just need just curiosity really, and then Mixpanel does the rest.
So one more final question before we go off to a little bit of a bonus section at the end of this conversation, where we're going to actually demo some of the stuff that we talked about today. So my colleague Ross is going to demo how you do that dynamic cohort sync into OneSignal, which is what you're doing, obviously not with your data. But my final question is, what's next for Zilch, right? You've seen this huge rise. What comes next? And maybe in a light of the current economic situation, are you thinking about continuing growth? Are you thinking about retention? Are you thinking about adding value? Are you thinking about all of the above?
So Zilch currently serves 2 markets. We're present in the UK and in the US. And as of right now, we want to make sure we've got our bases covered, and that we continue to add value to our customers, and we continue to, you know, help them either spread their payments or gain rewards through transactions. In a sense, our mission hasn't really changed as much given the economic environment. We're still very passionate about adding value to our customers.
We just simply want to, be the most empowering way to pay, basically, for anything anywhere.
Pretty much, yeah.
I love it. Let's finish on that tagline. Perfect. Really, really useful, guys. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat. Really useful points that you've raised that hopefully resonates with some of your peers from other organizations that are listening in today. What we will do is we will do a follow-up on this. So it would be great if we could share a link for how people, if they're not already customers of Zilch, can become customers of Zilch. Or if you're okay with it, as there's some peers that will be listening in, share your LinkedIn information. If people want to get in contact, find out more, they can do so. That would be awesome. All right, I appreciate that. I'm not actually sure how we're going to change over to Ross, or if Ross is maybe going to join us. Ross is from backstage.
Right. We're going to leave you guys to it then. Take care.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Speak soon. Ross, I will stay on stage if you don't mind, but I'll allow you to share your screen and give people a little bit of a taste of what this actually looks like.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can now see a Mixpanel dashboard or board.
Yeah, over to you, mate.
Good. So, thank you, James. So just as an introduction, my name is Ross Walker. I lead our solutions engineering team here at Mixpanel. So over the next kind of 15, 20 minutes, what I'm going to do is, as a follow-up to the Zilch guys talking, take you through a little bit about, well, how does that type of analysis that Tom and Boaz were talking about start to come to life in Mixpanel. And what do the reports look like? What does the analysis look like? And I think one of the things that really resonated with me that Boaz and Tom spoke about is this idea of self-serve. A lot of people have a whole bunch of data, but how can we make that data accessible to everybody within the organization so they can come in and they can answer those questions very easily? And where that starts within Mixpanel is in a few places. So right now, and by the way, as I go through this, there's a Q&A section maybe over that side or that side of the screen. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to drop them in there, and we'll hopefully get through them at the end of this. But where this tends to start is in a few places in Mixpanel. First of all, we have these dashboards where you're able to save, share, add all of those useful KPIs, metrics, reports that you can pull out of all of this data that you have access to. But if we go back to the beginning and really look at, well, where does this data start to build up, right? If I click on the user's screen up here at the top, what you will start to see here is all of these individual lines. And these take us through to what we call a people profile. But each one of these individual users represents a user that's engaging with the platform that you're currently tracking. This can be cross-platform, it could be mobile, web, app, anywhere that you have your users engaging with your platform, you're able to track within Mixpanel. And if I click on one of these users, it's going to take us through to what we call a people profile. And for me, these are very much the building blocks of Mixpanel. Every single user that engages with your platform, whether they're an anonymous user, a known registered user, is going to have one of these profiles, right? And the idea is that this is a collection of two key bits of information. The first bit of information over here on the left tells us, well, who is that user? Where is that user located? What is their device information? Maybe we care about what type of account that user has, how many times has they referred a user, how many reward points have they accumulated. There's a huge amount of information that Mixpanel tracks both out of the box and allows you to define that's very specific to your organization and to your KPIs. Then we look over here on the right, and over here on the right, we have that user's activity feed. So as the Zilch team were talking about, Mixpanel can track all those buttons, any action that your user is triggering. It's very easy to track that into Mixpanel. There's a number of ways to do that through SDK, through data warehouses, but ultimately it's very easy and flexible to set up Mixpanel to track those actions that your users are taking. And they will flow through to Mixpanel in real time, right? But once we've started to collect this information and we look, well, here's a single user and here's everything we know and all of the journeys of this single user. It's great to look at a single user, but where we're going to pull out true value and really make those decisions that drive innovation is when we go up to the reports section and we start to aggregate this information across our hundreds, thousands, or even millions of users. And that allows us to ask those important questions of that data. And it allows us to ask them very easily. So for example, the first question I might want to identify here is, well, who are those power users that are engaging with my platform? So over here on the left, if I select my event, it drops down all of those actions that we're tracking about our users, all of those actions that users can trigger. And maybe what I care about here is users that are performing a deposit into my platform. The default view we get here over the last 30 days, and we have complete control over this time frame, and we can change the visualization or the individual points that we look at. In this case, I want to look at a bar chart. So I want to look at a total. We've had just under 6,000 deposits over the last 30 days. But actually, I want to understand, well, how many users are really driving those deposits? Very easily, I can drop this down. I can flip to something like weekly active, daily active, monthly active depositors. I can count my session metrics. But in this case, I want to look at my unique users. So I've been able to identify my 6,000 deposits have come from about 1,300 unique users. But actually what we want to do now is we want to start to dig into this even more. So I'm going to flip over to this total, and I'm going to flip over to my distribution. And what this allows me to see very easily is, well, how are those 1,300 users made up, and how many times are each of those users performing deposits? So very easily, I'm able to identify the 315 users that made one deposit, or the 100 users that made 5 deposits. But maybe what's interesting to me here, especially when it comes to engagement of users, is this 159 users that have done 9 deposits. They've deposited more than anybody else within my platform. And I can click on this. Very easily, I can click view users. And then in Mixpanel, I get to see who those users are. I could export it via CSV if I wanted to, but we don't really want to do that. What I can do is I can create my cohort of users directly in line at Mixpanel, and I can save this group of users for a whole bunch of other analysis, and to connect that to those other tools that Tom and Boaz talked about. Maybe we want to start to engage this group of users through one signal and reward them for their increased deposits, and hopefully get them to go down that route of making a referral to bring more people into the platform. Yeah. But we'll come back to that in a minute. Where we want to go next is we actually understand, well, what is the journey that the users took to either result in that deposit or after that deposit? And I can do this in a number of ways. So very easily, I can first jump over to a report like Flows. Flows allows me to say, well, let's grab our users that did a deposit. And actually, we're not just going to look at the deposit. We're going to look at the first deposit that user ever made. And very easily, we can do that. And I can see, well, what does that journey look like after and before the users made their first ever deposit, right? So very easily, Mixpanel is able to automatically help me identify, without any huge data experience. I appreciate I work for Mixpanel and make this look very easy, but I assure you it is as easy as I've made it look. We're able to quickly identify the journey that results in users making their first ever deposit and what they then go on to do after that first ever value moment that they've hit within our platform. And we might want to do some additional analysis on that. Right? That's where we can then jump into something like a funnels report. And we can start to say, hey, of users that installed my app, how many of those users then went on to make a deposit? And of those users that made a deposit, how many of those users then actually went on to potentially we can look at any of those events that we've got, but in this case, I might want to look how many then went on to engage with my promotion, for example, right? At each of those individual steps, we can look at the drop-off. I can also apply any breakdowns that we've got here to see if that changes across the operating system, the initial referrer, the account type that the user is on. Any of those useful properties that we store both at the user level and at the event level, we're able to segment, right? So in this case, I might want to look at, well, does this change based on whether my user is a club member or a premier member, for example? I can also flip over and look at things like, well, how long is it taking users to make that first ever deposit? Very easy, I can start to see, well, it takes users around, in the premier account, about 3.5 days, whereas users on the club account, it takes them about 4 days to make their first ever deposit and then go on to click that promo banner within my platform. Maybe that's a metric we want to save. We will put on a dashboard, make some changes, see if we can get that time to initial value moment down to as short and efficient as possible. But if we go back to the original funnel, what I really want to focus on is potentially, and we can just get rid of this group of users for now, is this group of users. So that those users that have made that deposit and then not gone on to click on my promo banner or potentially make that referral. If we click here, very easily, I can view those users and we can create that cohort directly within Mixpanel. But what I want to do is actually come up here to the top, go into my cohort builder and make my own meaningful cohort. And if I click create cohort, I might want to create a group of users that are potentially at risk. And those group of users are potentially users that have deposited at least 4 times within the last 30 days. However, have potentially, and I can easily flip did to did not. If we flip that to did not and change this to the last 5 days, for example, I've created this group of users that have been highly engaged with my platform. They were making many deposits, having many value moments within the last month, but they've not performed any action within the last week. Maybe that is a sign that they're churning. They're not as engaged as they once were. They're not receiving those value moments anymore. So we want to do something meaningful with that. And we want to engage with those users before we lose them and we see an uninstall event from that user. So if I create my cohort, I've now got this cohort of at-risk users saved within Mixpanel. I could plot that on a dashboard, see how that number of users is changing over time. But actually what I want to do here is I want to leverage this export functionality that we have here. And at the moment, I don't have any export, any integrations connected. But if we go to our integrations screen, Mixpanel gives me all of those tech stack tools that we can start to connect Mixpanel with. This could be my data warehouse, so we can stream data in and out of data warehouse, or it could be all of these best in breed tech stack tools that you have within your organization already. And when we start to talk about the Zilch specific use cases, they use OneSignal a lot. Tom talked about how much he spends time in OneSignal. Very easily, I can connect Mixpanel to OneSignal, share my API keys, share the tokens, and then the cohorts that we've created in Mixpanel seamlessly and automatically sync over to OneSignal and allow us to engage in a meaningful way through OneSignal with that group of at-risk users that we've just created. I can also sync to my ad networks. Mixpanel has over 100 different integrations that you connect. So I won't go through them all now, but you can look on our integrations page of our website and find them all there. And one of the final things that I'll share with you before maybe we go back to a Q&A section and before I let James wrap up is the two ways that these integrations work. We spent a lot of time talking about sending cohorts from Mixpanel over to an engagement tool. But actually, a lot of the integrations that we have with Mixpanel are actually bi-directional. So we've created this meaningful cohort of users, of at-risk users. We've sent them over to OneSignal, and we've sent them a message offering them a free trial or nudging them to come back into the platform and start engaging again. How do we know that that has actually worked? So if we go back into funnels, when a user gets sent a message, OneSignal, as well as any other engagement tools, are going to send an event back to Mixpanel. So I can see an event here, which is, well, users that have been sent a message, how many of those were actually received or opened or clicked on that message, then came back and made a subsequent deposit, for example. This allows me to see here, well, 80% of the users that received that message came back within the next 30 days and actually made a deposit. So I can then start to determine, well, did my message actually have the impact that we wanted it to? I can change this down to something like, well, how many users came back within the same day, for example, and start to see, well, actually, here's how that metric changes. But I think connecting Mixpanel with a lot of those other tools that you already have within that ecosystem only enables you to get more value out of the tech stack that you currently have and really double down on that analysis and how that analysis drives innovation within your specific app or platform or website going forward.
Awesome.
So we got 5 minutes left. I don't know if there's a Q&A or maybe I can stop sharing my screen so you don't see this horrible view here.
Yeah, maybe stop. Thanks, Ross. I think one of the things I love most about Mixpanel is the ability to dynamically update your cohort lists, right? So dynamically updating who you're looking to engage with and driving that, and then looking at the insights to see how they engage based on what that ideal customer profile looks like or whatever it looks like for the specific campaign that you're doing. And the guys at Zilch mentioned it, right? Just sort of understanding what are the metrics that drive that we want to calculate that shows, okay, this is the type of person that fits within that cohort. And then I want to message them with this, and are they reacting the way I want? Is so powerful because you can set it up and it works, right? And you can tweak what you're looking at, but ultimately it just drives, right? In this fast-paced world, that's really super important. Okay, well, thank you very much, Ross, and thanks again to Thomas and Boaz from Zilch, and thank you for everyone for joining us this morning. It was very active in the chat and the Q&A, which sorry I didn't get to, but what I think is best is I'm going to make sure that we follow up on every single question that comes in. We will be sharing some information post this on what we discussed in written form. I will put links to connect everyone, and I'll add in some additional information on the points that people asked for or links that people find useful. But sorry we didn't get to your question today, but all shall be followed up with. So thank you very much for everyone for joining today, and looking forward to seeing you at the next session. Thanks, Ross. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.